So a lot of atheists have been claiming on my Facebook page that they don't need to defend their position because their atheism is simply a lack of belief. And since it's a lack of belief, they don't need to defend it.
Actually, that's not why. Atheists don't have anything to defend because if you Godfatherers hadn't started claiming that a God did exist, our position would be exactly the same. And your side has completely failed at providing adequate evidence to justify your assertion that God is real. Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Meet Once Forgiven, Now Free, who I'm pretty sure I've tussled with before, and he's going to completely misunderstand how burden of proof works. Or maybe that's giving him way too much credit, and he actually does understand that the burden is his, and he doesn't like it.
Now, that's pretty absurd, so I decided to make a meme about it. When atheists claim that their position is neutral and requires no justification because they simply lack a belief. By that logic, a belief that cars have no maker is neutral and requires no defense since it is simply a lack of belief in car makers.
You know, the best memes are punchier than that, more concise. I'm just saying.
So I want to address a common criticism. Alright, this one came up time and time again, and as you can see, 68 atheists liked it. So obviously, it's a common belief among atheists. So this guy said, the fact that cars have makers is demonstrable and backed by irrefutable evidence. When you can point me to similarly compelling evidence for the existence of God, I'll have no problem accepting it.
Well, exactly. We can go to a car factory. We can watch the cars being made. We can even get a job there and help make them ourselves. That kind of evidence is pretty difficult to deny. But when you claim that a God exists, do we get to see anything? Touch anything? Do we get to examine it through an electron microscope, chart its history through carbon dating? Do we get enough evidence that can be independently verified so that it will convince a scientist or at least a court of law? Because in the experience of anybody with an open mind who hasn't been brainwashed by scripture or its advocates, the answer is a pretty resounding no. But that is the kind of evidence that's required when the claim is that something exists. And you've failed to provide any. And what has been asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Atheists don't have anything to prove because this isn't a competition. You've said that something is real, but given us no reason to believe you.
So what atheists did here is they actually misrepresented my position. I'm not even comparing the amount of evidence for car makers versus the amount of evidence for God's existence. I'm merely showing that just because you lack a belief in something, that doesn't mean that that position is neutral or requires no justification.
Except that it is neutral. If you were being told, no, you're wrong, God does not exist, okay, that's not a neutral position and does require some justification, but not much. But when the position is that religion's claims are unconvincing and therefore not believed, that is neutral, and the only justification necessary is that your claims hold about as much water as psychics, telepaths, or people who think that Star Trek is better than Star Wars. My own position is somewhere in the middle. I'm quite convinced that you're full of shit because religious arguments are completely loopy, but my mind is open to real evidence should any surface.
Now, what about the existence of God? Where is the evidence? Well, Christians can provide a lot of positive evidence for the existence of God, whether it's the moral argument, or the ontological argument, or the teleological argument.
See, that's not evidence. Those are arguments. I could prove the existence of absolutely anything, provided I never had to show anything physical as evidence. You're gonna have to do better than that.
Or even the evidence from the resurrection of Jesus.
What evidence? All we have are stories from thousands of years ago. Stories written by people with a vested interest in the resurrection being real. When you can show a story from somebody who's unbiased and show physical evidence that somebody, anybody, came back from the dead after 3 days, then we'll start to have a real conversation. Until then, I believe your story significantly less than those of UFO abductees. And I don't really believe those at all. Not that I don't wish they were true, and hey, extraterrestrials visiting our world is at least scientifically plausible, but wishing never made anything so.
Or, watch any debate by William Lane Craig, where he can defend about half a dozen arguments for the existence of God.
Ugh, right. Billy Craig, whose entire repertoire of arguments all neatly sidestep the need to show any real-world evidence, who equivocates between various definitions of words when it's convenient, and who has never actually won a debate that I've ever seen. And I've seen at least my fair share.
Now, what about the evidence against the existence of God? Well, atheists don't have any. That's why they try and claim that they don't need to provide any evidence.
First of all, telling us why we do or don't do something.
Oh, you better believe that's a pattern.
And no, we don't need evidence that proves there is no God. We only need evidence that says your arguments for God are bullshit. Like I said before, this isn't a competition. You've claimed that something is real, but you've given no reason why any rational, objective person should believe you. That's all we need to be atheists.
Now let's think about this. If all the evidence is on the side of there being a God,
it's not. So we can pretty much dismiss whatever the hell it is you're about to say. But because I play fair, I always link video and channel in my video's description. So if anyone wants to see it, by all means, go ahead.
See, here's the thing. You want to claim that you don't need to defend your position by virtue of the fact that it's a lack of belief.
Again, telling us why we say something?
That's a paddling.
Now, I can't speak for all atheists, but I don't have to defend my position because you haven't presented anything that truly challenges it, and anything that's attempted to challenge it has flaws that are very easily pointed out. I'll defend my position when I actually have something to prove, as opposed to showing why someone saying I'm wrong doesn't hold water. And when you think about it, that really is defending my position, because when you say, here are the reasons that you should believe a God exists, I respond with, but here's what's wrong with those reasons. You have not been convincing, and thus I continue to not believe. But you have to defend your position. I just did. Go away.
But see, you guys are all very quick to point out that cars do have a maker. There are people who build cars, and there's good evidence for that. And so what you're really saying
That's a paddling.
is that atheism is not a neutral belief. And in order to be an atheist, you have to be able to show that there is no good evidence for the existence of God.
That's not what's being said at all. If anything, it's the exact opposite. To be believed when you say that something has a creator, you have to be able to show that creator. We can show people making cars. Heck, we can even be one. But you cannot show or be a god. That's what's being said. And I have no idea how you could have gotten it so ass backward.
And so the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate that there is no evidence for the existence of God.
No, the burden of proof is always on the person who says that something does exist. Always. The only time this might be reversed is when something has been pretty conclusively shown to be the case, but someone else claims that it's been misinterpreted, or that they have new data showing it in a different light, if not being completely wrong. But even that is still having to prove that something is the case, as opposed to simply pointing out the flaws in somebody else's claim.
So again, if you want to claim that no one builds cars or makes cars, you better have a good reason. And if you want to claim that there is no creator, that there is no God, then again, you better have a good reason.
I do have good reasons. The reason is that your arguments are a steaming pant load. And I'm spent. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please, think. Ignorance killed the cat. Curiosity was framed.